welcome back to the Pastor Pod. We're so glad you're with us. Taking some time to lean in with me and Jay. The Pastor Pod, if you're just new to this awesome community, we are sharing what we're learning, having honest conversations. And really, at the end of the day, the Pastor Pod's all about what pastors really think about stuff. So Jay, so glad you're with me again.
Well, we say
You're
pastors. Maybe that's kind of a little biased because it's really just me and you, what we think about things. We have guests from time to time, but really it's what do we think about things? So I guess it was a shout out though, because we've Josh, you were mentioning earlier, you've heard from some of our buddies from school.
Yeah.
This week, got some emails. Shout out to Zeb Cook, who
Yep.
gave us a little shout out emailed us and said, hey, enjoying the podcast. And then there was another one. Who was the other one? Remind me.
Yeah, Brian McPherson was also another BCF grad. So Zeb and Brian, shout out to you guys. Man, it's so good that you're tuning in. And Zeb's up in North Carolina and Brian's in Georgia. So, man,
go.
Good stuff.
Awesome.
We're glad they're tuning in. We might have to have them on sometime.
Yeah, listen, let's have people. I love having guests. And I think, we can look forward to this year. We're going to have some guests just like we did last year. We've been talking about having even some, maybe even a repeat, because there's some that just, they have gold and it's hard not to say, can you come back and give us some more? So looking forward to that. And grateful people are working through some of the learning process we have with podcasting, because if it's not a shock to you, we don't exactly know all that what we're doing. But we just know we have a passion to bring, good, honest conversations and to the table and say, hey, look, what do we think about this? What's going on? And we love to get your feedback. So make sure that you're reaching out. Don't feel bad about emailing us or reaching out and let us know what you're thinking. But there's been lots of tech issues along the way of us learning how to edit and put things together. And that's even going into church. I don't know about you, but lately, when did you, Josh, let me ask you this. When did you start with the online, really getting your act together online? Was it before the pandemic, or was it, when did the Bridge Church really get their act together on that? How much of a presence did they have before the pandemic? Because I think the pandemic kind of really pushed and lunged everything into action, but how much was it beforehand?
Yeah, if you missed the earlier episodes, I shared a little bit of my story of moving to the Bridge right when the pandemic, everything shut down, where I was in Jacksonville and also here. So yeah, when I moved here, it was literally online only because of our location. We're portable. The high school wouldn't let us in. So we were pre-recording our worship sermons in the office. We have an office space that we rent here in Venice. So we were using this little room, and then we decided to go to the bigger room where the youth and larger groups meet. And so we tried our best to be creative, but really it was really stripped down, simple, not a lot of camera shots. Then we tried to go to a couple camera shots and just tried to keep being creative and not let it become so just basic and just one camera shot, no creativity. So we tried our best to be that way. We don't have a facility. We don't have all the newest stuff. So I think we did the best we could with what we had. But
well, yeah, thinking back to when it was like we couldn't meet in person, did you feel weird not actually getting up and going somewhere on the weekend to actually worship?
Oh, I hated it.
I always felt like odd. It was odd. Like I don't know. It was weird for me.
It's not enough.
Can I just say it was weird. It was strange for me. My kids even thought it was weird. They're like, what is going on? Like I'm watching. And now can we just talk about what it's like to watch yourself on video?
Yeah, let's talk about it. It's awkward.
That is super awkward. I don't like hearing my voice.
And it's weird to watch yourself and be like, well, that's a good point. Oh, that's prideful. Yeah. Or like, why did I say that? Why do I look that way when I say,
did I wear that shirt? That's you're even more spiritual than I was. I'm like, dang, don't wear those pants again. Jay, don't wear those pants. I'm so self-conscious about the way I look.
I think every pastor struggles with that. If we're honest, we struggle with it.
Some of my good friends, I preached this past week, got off of the platform, and I decided this week I was gonna look different. I was like, hey, I'm gonna wear khakis this week because I wear jeans. Like, if you don't know me, I could wear a hoodie And I mean, I planted a church, so there's really the DNA is whatever I want it to be, whatever we create it to be, right? And so it's jeans and Grayson wears jeans and a black shirt every Sunday. I'm
Right.
like, is that
Right.
all you have?
That's the worship leader that's the
I
worship
guess
leader uniform,
you
man.
said costume. You're accurate,
I saw-
absolutely right. It's a costume. It's
No,
a
I meant to say
costume.
uniform.
Worship
All the
leaders, if
worship
you're
leaders are
listening,
like,
you wear a
delete.
costume.
They're canceling this podcast. You are canceled. Cancel Josh.
So
I will never forgive you for what you've said. No, it's funny though.
put your
Yeah.
costume on. So I wore khakis and I wore these blue Clark nice shoes. And somebody got off there and said, Jay, do I call you Elvis now? I was like, what are you talking about?
Elvis?
Blue suede shoes on today, Jay. I was like, oh, come on.
What?
Sound
Come on. You're
self-conscious.
trying here. You're trying.
I'm trying to shake it up a little bit, look a little nice. So anyhow, let's just talk about the awkwardness of it. And yeah, online church has really been a game changer. It really has changed things. And that's why I'm excited about our conversation today, Josh, is we're going to really be talking about and trying to answer the question, is online church the future? And what that looks like. And I think it's something every leader is wrestling with right now. Any church leader that is trying to figure out, that next step, they're wrestling with like, what role does online play? And today we're going to look at pros, we're going to look at cons, and really what this means for the future. It's going to be a good conversation. I think it's one that I'd love to hear feedback on. I'm hoping people will interact with us on this and join the conversation. So let's take a short little break and then we'll be right back. We're gonna have this good conversation, Josh. All right. So we'll be right back. All right. Welcome back. And Josh, talking about being on camera, we have this conversation every week when we get on this podcast. If you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing out because you can see that Josh has the brain power behind him with all the books. And I'm in my basement and you can't see really anything behind me.
That's all a joke. It's just a green screen.
Oh, it's just a green screen.
No, I'm kidding. It's really my books, but it just makes me look smarter. I need all the help I can get. So,
and then we have this debate back and forth all the time about the headphones. Like, and I tell Josh all the time, he's got like the real podcaster headphones. And I'm like, I don't want those. My head's already
they're like $28 on Amazon. They're not special.
But my head's already big enough, so I don't need anything else sticking on it. And so I get these little earbud things. My worship leader makes fun of me in his costume every week. So
when did you do a podcast on worship leaders and invite some worship leaders to come on?
There we go. And talk about like the relationship between a worship and that's a good one. Write that one down.
That'd be a fun one. Yeah, we'll have to come up with that.
But today we're going to be talking about online church. So we're glad you're here. And we look forward to really talking through this. And so, Josh, I'm curious to know as we're, we dive into this subject, what are some of the pros that you have found when it comes to church online? Have we learned, and what have we learned about it being a resource for the local church and the purpose of the church? So dive in. Let us know a little bit about what you found to be beneficial of online church.
Of course, it's great to have because you can connect people. People now watch church before they ever show up in person. That's like the new front door. I think it's not the front door. It's not even the website. I think it's even the website that leads to the online experience. So I met people that were moving here, like watching online for months before they decided to actually like join the church. So they would Zoom with me, or they'd say, hey, can we talk to you about this? Or we want to know about where you guys are going and your vision. And so it really opened the door to a lot of connection when everything was shut down in 2020. But here's the thing. I'm in Florida. It's very different than Massachusetts. It's very different than some other states. And so my experience with online is very different than what you've experienced and others have experienced. So online's great. I love that we have teaching content available. We have worship that people can tune in if they can't be there, or if they're sick, or they're out of town. I think all of that is huge. I struggle though with what is the future? What does that look like? Is that going to be the full picture of the local church? I know we're going to talk about that, but I think there's a lot of pros to it. And I think that the 2020 probably sped up the process for every church to figure out what their online looks like. They had to. All those that were fighting it and were making fun or thought, man, we're, churches that are, that are trying to be cool or whatever, they had to figure out some way to broadcast their services to minister to their people. So I think it took away a lot of like 10 years of arguments. And now
Well,
churches are
they
saying,
just
what now? You know,
it was
where do you go
almost
now?
it was almost required. Like again, you had to church plant. So this started in Josh, this all started in 2019. Here we are in 2022. It's hard to believe it's been that long.
Hmm.
And so all this started. And so in 2019, we were only a few years in, and we were making plans to go, start online, because we knew that's what we needed to do. But with a church plan, it moves a little slower. And you
Hmm.
might be listening and find yourself in a spot where you're not there yet either, and trying to navigate,
Hmm.
well, how do I make this happen? But we saw the pros in it before the pandemic. But as you said earlier, it sped everything up, and we had to figure it out.
Right.
And we really fumbled through quite a bit of what that looked like. And it was not easy, but we
Hmm.
realized, for the same reasons used, like, it's a great connector. And even today, so now, we're
Hmm.
back in person, just like most churches are back in person. I'm not sure if there's any areas that are not meeting in person right now, but we're in person. We're back to a mask mandate here in Massachusetts.
Hmm.
And so, well, in my area, not all of Massachusetts, but where I'm at, so we still have to wear a mask to church, but we're back in person. But we still see the value of having it in person. I mean, online, because, as you said, when people are sick, when people are not there,
Hmm.
people will tune in. They'll listen to it. Now, they may not be listening to it live. What I have found is people are not listening to it live or watching it live.
Hmm.
And the awkwardness when it comes to online tends to be the worship aspect, the music aspect. That's what I've heard from people. Is, I'm not typically watching it online, but that's what I've heard
Hmm.
from people. But there's some great pros to it, and I think it's worthwhile. I think it's a means to the future. As you mentioned earlier, it is part of the front door. I still
Hmm.
think the website, obviously somebody's going to Google you. And I ask
Yeah.
people how you found us. They're going to be like, hey, we Googled Milestone,
Right.
or
Hmm.
we Googled churches near me. But typically what they're going to do ever before they ever darken our doors is they're going to find something, some kind of content that's going to give them that kind of experience. I think one of the benefits we have is we have an opportunity to really invite people into our church gathering before they ever show up, because we all know, being a guest at a church, the awkward moments are the first few moments when you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
You don't know, this kind of can break down that barrier. Now, I say that, but then there are some churches now that their online experience looks totally different than the in-person experience. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying that's negative at all, but that's a whole different approach
Hmm.
that you're seeing nowadays, is that, and it takes a little bit more work, because now you're having to, that's pre-recorded, obviously,
Hmm.
because that pastor, one of my friends here, is doing it, and that pastor has to preach it earlier in the week, so that what's broadcast is actually pre-recorded, because that's not their, they're at a table in a dining room.
Hmm. Hmm.
You obviously know that's not what it looks like in the church building.
Right.
And you're catering, I think there's twofold there. You're catering, that is catering to the person who is not ready to come to church yet. They're
Hmm.
not ready to darken the doors, and you're really connecting with that person as the pastor,
Hmm.
versus letting them into the experience of what church looks like. So when you do online, are you broadcasting your service, or are you doing something separate, Josh? I'm just out of curiosity.
We right now we're live, so it's whatever's happening happens. And we've had a lot of technical issues. We've had some limitations because of internet issues where we meet. Of course, that's not necessarily anyone's fault. It just happens off and on. So we've had some technical glitches and issues that we've had to just work on each week. So there's sometimes one service will go, the internet cuts out. Like last week we had the big storm came through, so we lost power 3 times, and so the first service was cut in half. And
Reset
so
all the internet.
yeah, so it's hard. So right now that's what we're doing. When we were shut down, we did pre-recorded live.
Right.
During that season.
Yeah, and we've even taken other boundaries. I mean, we've been really creative with our online. We have, if you watch our online, you'll see probably anywhere between 3 and 5 different shots, but we only have 2 cameras. We have a wireless rover camera that changes positions all
Oh,
throughout our
cool.
thing. We've gotten really creative with how we
Yeah.
can do it to where we can keep it. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of benefits to, I believe, the online experience that
Absolutely.
it's part of the future. I believe it's part of where we are, and we need to learn to
Hmm.
embrace it. And every church will embrace it differently. There's a lot of churches that are smaller and just
Yes.
don't have the capacity to
Hmm.
do what other churches are doing. And
Hmm.
that's a difficult situation to be in too, because you get that kind of like comparison. But
Yes.
I would encourage people this: when it comes to online, do the best you can with what you have, and
Mhm.
avoid at all costs the comparison, because even though mine is as good as it is and yours is as good as it is, we're probably not up there with the Craig Rochelle's and the bigger mega churches that are doing online. We're not there. And
Mhm.
so just do the best you can with what you have. If it's one camera in the back that's running on your phone and it's not even on a real camera, just love your people, shepherd your people, and do the best you can with your people. I believe that's really an encouragement for our pastors that are
Mhm.
listening, going, hey, how do I do this? Because
Mhm.
depending on the size of your church and your ability is what you can do. But I believe the pros outweigh the
The
challenges,
negatives,
which
yeah.
we're going to look at in a minute, but the
Well, and
challenges, and it's
it's not
necessary.
it's not like this is something we just had to do because COVID came. Like this is what audio sermons used to be to 1980s.
Well, this
It
is
was
where
like
the
this new
tapes were.
thing.
You got a
Yeah,
tape
yeah,
sent to you,
like
right?
back in the day, like go get my tape or get my CD. Then when the CDs came out, get my CD in the back. I was like, oh, CD,
Everybody had the CD
Now,
burner tower.
yeah, like your podcast, your online service is in essence to this generation that's coming up. That's normal. Like it's not like this new thing.
Yeah,
It's not like this. Oh wow, they have an online service. Almost like that's a given. That's expected, and it's an influence, and it's a way to reach, connect, and encourage people. But is
right.
it the full answer? And that's what we're talking about today.
So let's talk. So we talked a little about the pros, and I think we've nailed the fact that there's a lot of pros, and there's tons that we didn't even cover that are when it comes to online church. But what about some of the challenges? Because I think this is where I really want to get real. And some people don't want to be transparent about it. We want to act like we have our act together, but there are challenges. What are some of the challenges that we see when it comes to online church? Josh, what about you guys?
I mean, I think at this point of our, I don't even know what you call the COVID history, but let's just say we're in the
We're in the third.
Omicron.
We're in
We're
the
in the third
third level.
season. We're in the Omicron season. Okay. At this point, most people,
Have you ever seen? Have you ever seen? Have you ever seen? No, what is it? Inception. We're in the third tier of dreams. Is what
yeah,
we
I
are. We're in
don't,
the third tier. We're
I
three
still
deep.
don't understand that movie though. That movie
No one
confused
does.
me.
No one
Okay.
does. And
I,
I think
I walked away like that was cool.
that's why this is a good
I,
comparison. No one understands what we're going through or happened.
nobody
Even
knows.
the pros who think they have it all put, they don't understand. We don't understand, but we
Yeah.
know we're in the third tier. Okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Josh.
No,
It hit
no.
me.
Portable church streaming is limited, especially if you're a portable church. Like if I just said that wrong. If you're a portable church, streaming and online is extra difficult because you're limited by
100%.
where you meet at, how
Yes.
fast the internet is, all that technical stuff. And you can't make decisions. You can't change equipment because it's not your equipment. So that's a challenge. That's a challenge. Not a hurdle, just a challenge. I think the other side of it is, how do we know who's committed to our local church? Who's actually committed, a part, a member, a partner, whatever you call your people? If they're only online and they don't connect, they don't fill out the online church connection card, they don't ever really comment or chat, but they kind of tune in either online, live, or like on demand at Sunday night or Monday morning or whatever. If we don't know they're tuning in and they're new and there's no data on them, how do we fulfill the one another's? How do we follow up? What if they have a prayer need? What if they want to take a next step in their faith? If there's no connection, communication, that's a challenge. And then I think the other one is a big one, is that the online church culture, outside of severe medical, dealing with cancer, you're homebound, you travel, half the year because of your job. I think the increase of the consumeristic Christianity has been amplified through the online church push, because people would rather sit on the couch, not get dressed because they're exhausted on Sunday morning, and they watch and tune in or take a nap during our sermons, whatever. That it creates this environment that because of COVID, that's okay to do that indefinitely.
Mm.
And I struggle with that because I do know people that have severe like health concerns and they're going through treatment and they can't be out with a group of people. And it's not just even COVID. So that's not what I'm talking about. But that consumeristic, I'm not going to come to church because I might catch the virus. But then they're also involved in every other realm of society. And you see them at the ball field, you see them at Publix, you see them at, I struggle with that.
And
And
I think
I don't want to be critical, but that's just being honest. I think if we were to poll every pastor in America, that's where so much strain has been, is like, you don't know who's really with you anymore. And what COVID has revealed is how many people are truly committed to their local church. So I know I'm just kind of rapid fire, but
I actually think I think the honest and transparency is good. We tag this saying this is what pastors are really thinking about things, and we can speak from our perspective. And we all have conversations with other pastors, but there's no doubt it's been shown that this is one of the most challenging times to be a pastor. Ed Stetzer tweeted the other day, "Pray for your pastor. This is a challenging time for anyone to be a pastor." And I think some of the reasons why is what you're communicating is some of the challenges that come with online are exactly what you're talking about. There are the limitations that come based off of what you're able to do. Is kind of what I was talking about just a few minutes ago. Some people feel as if, well, I can't do it to that level, so I can't do it at all. Or I'm portable and the internet's, sketchy here, there. I don't know if I can do it. There's those limitations. But then there's ramifications. There's limitations and there's ramifications. And I think the ramifications of what you're talking about are some of the most intense challenges that we're facing. And hear this from a pastor's heart. It is not necessarily critical of it's a pastor's heart. A pastor says, I want to shepherd people. I want to love people. I want to lead people. I want to be there. I want to lock arms with them. And when I'm not seeing them, when I'm not interacting with them, I don't even know if you've been around, you're not engaged to the level you need to be engaged. It's hard for me to do that. And it breaks the pastor's heart. It tears you apart.
It does.
Because you know what you've been called to do. And I can understand what you're saying. The increase of like a consumer Christian mentality. In some ways, we're kind of, and I'm going to get blasted for this. I'm almost kind of fearful of what I can say, but I'm being real with you. Right. But it's almost as if we're making this extremely easy to call ourselves Christians at this point, because we can just add it to our life. I can watch online on Tuesday morning on my way to work. I don't have to go on Sunday. I can just watch it on my way to work. They were treating it no different than this podcast right now.
Yeah.
It's just something
you're just consuming content.
Yeah.
So I think online you can connect, you can pray for one, you can
100%
do things that are living out the gospel, right?
Right.
But you cannot fully be relational, caring, life on life, equip others just online. And I think there's a lot of push right now saying, oh no, that's the future. Yes, it's the future of it being a tool, but the true pandemic has not just been a virus, it's been relational isolation and depression and suicide.
Studies have
because
proven this.
Studies are proven. Of course, nobody talks about it hardly.
Right.
The political world, the news world, they hardly ever talk about that. It's just about what gets the views right now. And there is a true virus. Trust me, I know, been through it. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, the goal is life on life relationships, and you can't sit behind a screen all the time and expect to grow spiritually and be challenged, equipped, and encouraged. So, but I also see the other side. There's people that truly have been sick, going through challenging seasons. That's one thing, and I can totally.
Well, I think there's a difference in what you're saying, though. Let's call it what it is.
Let's be real clear. Yeah.
I want to be, there's a difference. It's a tool that can be used in seasons of life where it's necessary. I can't meet with my church family, but I want to be with my church family. And so here's a resource and a tool that a church has available that we can do it. But then there comes a point where it's no longer necessary for you in life. And what does it look like for you to engage with your church family on an more intimate level? Life on life. And I understand this is the future. In some sense, everything's moving to a technology is advancing, and we need to embrace that as a local church, but we cannot neglect being the local church. And again, what that looks like to be the local church. Because that's the other difficulty. And I say the other challenge that's coming in here is no longer, we have to be careful about that, because now what stops me from living in, Metro West Boston, where I'm at now, and saying I
Mhm.
go to church in Colorado because I'm
Mhm.
worshiping with such and such church in Colorado. What does it mean to be the local church?
Right.
And I think that's another struggle, because
Mhm.
that local witness is extremely, extremely important. If I'm trying to point everybody to a church in Colorado, it's very hard for us to really, lock
Mhm.
arms and be the church and have that
Mhm.
force that we can have if we're a local church. So that's another challenge that I see happening. And so
It's
I
a
think,
challenge. It's an opportunity, I think, along with what you're saying, there's an opportunity involved in that. I just really struggle with how do we disciple, lead, and equip people if you never see them.
so there's
You
engagement
just never
piece.
see them.
There's an
Yeah.
engagement piece that is a two-way, it's a
Mhm.
two-way thing. So you've seen the memes, like, I feel bad sometimes when I don't call people to check up on them, but then I realize the phone is two-way, works both ways, and they're not calling
Right.
me either.
Mhm.
Is it a two-way relationship? I think that's the question we need to be asking.
Mhm.
And you should be asking, if you're on, is it a two-way relationship, or is it only a one-way relationship? If it's only
Mhm.
one way, is that really a relationship that you have with your local church? If all
Yes.
you're doing is consuming and there's
Mhm.
nothing back. Because
Yeah,
again, let's not neglect the fact that we're called to use our time, talents, and treasure
that's
to
right.
advance the kingdom. So how are we using our talents?
Mhm.
How are we investing in? It's a two-way, a relationship's always two ways. So that
Mhm.
relationship with the local church cannot only be one way.
Mhm.
And that's a question. If you can't answer that and say, yes, it's two-way, and this is the way it is two-way, then
Mhm.
there's a red flag that maybe you're falling into this spot where you've kind of gotten content with just being online versus engaging with a local church. And you can do that online, even if you're sick or not able to, you could still
Mhm.
do that, but
Absolutely.
finding ways to engage,
Mhm.
engage and connect and continue to do that.
Mhm.
Community groups, small groups are another way to do that. Like, if you're not able to make it, to the big weekend gathering, can you go to a community group? Can you be a part
Yeah.
of a
Yeah,
local
be in a
community group?
circle. Yeah.
Be with somebody. So
Mhm.
these are all really important. And I'd love to know. I mean, this is a good time to just put a plea out. This is a real conversation, and I feel like there needs to be a part two as we continue to have this conversation. But I'd love to hear from those that are listening.
Mhm.
Email, social media, whatever way you can. I'd love to hear your feedback of pros and cons. I
Mhm.
think it's important, and I'd love to share those later on. And maybe
Mhm.
there is a part two to this conversation, because that's what we want this to be, is a conversation where we're having, a two-way conversation about what we really think about this. So pastors, leaders, if you're out there, I'd love to hear your feedback, pros, cons, challenges that you're facing when it comes to online.
Mhm.
But as you look and you say, Josh, I think I sent it to you on, I sent it to a couple of people, a couple weeks ago. I was watching, and our friend Craig Rochelle, he is, the master of it, leading the way, and
Mhm.
kudos to him. But, he's offering church in the metaverse. You can go and watch it. You can go and find it. It's, you know, is this the way of the future, Josh? We got to, is that really it? Cause I mean, he's paving the way. We see it. I can actually see it. People are getting saved from what I can tell in the metaverse. So is this the future? Why or why not? That's the question.
I saw a clip. I think you sent it to me, right?
I
Where it's
think I
like
did.
it shows
Yeah.
like this maybe you're listening, you've seen this, but like it shows like this VR experience, like you're in a movie theater place and your little avatar can raise their hand. And so they were given the invitation and they were like avatars trusting in Christ. And I totally was like just thinking through it. Like, is this happening? This isn't no one's making this up as like a joke, or they're not being critical of a church or whatever. But number one, I love that Craig is willing to be creative. He's always thinking of ways to connect people to Christ. And I think that is what we should always be. I'd rather be leaning heavier on that than always than sounding like a
Yes.
curmudgeon saying, "Oh, I'm against all
Let's
this
be
new
clear. This
technology."
is not a
Yeah,
knock on Craig. Because
absolutely
again,
not.
I think
No.
every pastor can say, in some way, shape, or form, he's done an encouragement to the local church
Listen,
and supporting it.
how many people would be mocking us 20 years ago if we were talking about Zooming right now, recording a podcast,
Right.
putting it on Instagram and Twitter? And I mean, That's weird. Nobody's ever going to do that. So we always want to be flexible to try new methods, but keep the message the same. And I love that Craig holds that very clearly, at least from what I've been around.
Right.
So can we influence people with the metaverse? Absolutely. Should we do it? Yeah, let's figure it out. I don't know. I've not
I can
been
tell
into
you,
the metaverse,
Grayson,
so
our
I
worship
can't.
leader said he's got our stuff set up. He's
So
working
he's
on
got
it.
it in there.
I
Well,
have
I'd
no
love to
clue.
see you. I'd love
Me
to see
too.
you in the metaverse. I want to
Me
see your
too.
avatar.
I totally want to look cooler. We were talking about this earlier. I can control what I look like in the metaverse, right?
I guess you can be whoever you want. I mean, I don't
Watch
know.
out, world. I'm gonna look
Yeah,
way
this
cooler.
is getting awkward. Can you fully disciple someone on the metaverse? No. Can you live life on life? No. Can you? I mean, I have a hard time with someone growing to be a full, mature, multiplying disciple, sitting in their bedroom for 20 hours a day with VR glasses on. So I struggle with it. I mean, I do. But is it the future? Oh yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Right. I I don't even know what to say. It is challenging, right? And the
Yeah.
risk of feeling a little tension, I guess, is like, what does this look like? Because I think you have people on both sides of the debate of whether what we should do. There's totally people on both sides, and there has to be an aspect that we embrace, but there also has to be an aspect where we go, okay, let's make sure we're not watering down, we're not taking away from what who Jesus has called us to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't know about, can you disciple somebody in the metaverse? I don't know. Can you influence them? I don't know, because I don't know enough about the metaverse. I don't know about this world that I am not a part of yet. I don't even have an avatar that I'm aware of. Maybe they've created one for me already.
He probably did.
I
I
have
can't
no
wait.
clue.
Maybe we can share it.
Maybe Mark Zuckerberg's already got my avatar ready for me, and I look way cooler. But I don't know. Can you? I don't know. Those are answers that I don't have. Those are questions I don't have answers to. But I do know that it's worth us processing. But at the end of the day, the real subject is, how do we continue to advance the kingdom and advance the gospel and make disciples? And if there's barriers, we can't give in to technology just because it's the way of the future and limit our calling. Our calling always has to trump whatever the world around us is saying and doing. We have to still make disciples. I can tell you what I know from a fact. We know that the kingdom is advancing in areas where you're not allowed to meet. There is no Zoom. You have to be secretive about what you're doing and meeting, and people go and meet in dark places and will worship for hours on hours. That is where the kingdom of God is advancing on great measures, and we know this statistically. And it's not using anything that we're talking about right now. It's old school. Yeah. It's kind of old school, I would say.
No, it is. It's old
preaching
school,
God's word, studying God's word, and life on life discipleship. And so there has to be something in the balance there. I'm not sure the answer. And
I think you're hitting on the tension, though.
Yeah.
Some can say, well, guys, I'm listening to your conversation. I could agree with some of it, but man, what people really want is life on life, real people in a real room talking together face to face. They can feel each other's emotions and pray for one another and hug each other and high five each other. But then you could also say, well, how is everyone consuming content? Well, they're consuming content on their phones. They're consuming content on their laptops. They're consuming on iPads, so there's that tension. And I know, following Carey Nieuwhof and how many conversations about online and how it's not just like it is the future, but then we need relationships. So I think it's a both and, but I think at the end of the day, you and I can't fully become who Jesus wants us to become hiding in a room wearing a VR glasses. Like I'm just breaking it down to like, if we're going to be people that are, like you're saying, in underground church in China, people in India, church planners in North Africa, those that are pouring into areas where there's communist control. The church is exploding because the people of God are living out their faith. They're not hiding in their room with VR glasses on. So I struggle with it.
It is definitely, and
I think we in the American church, we have to struggle with it.
I
we're
think
not
this is a little
facing what
bit,
they're facing. We act like we're dealing with aggravations,
well, this just
political
hit me as we're
issues,
having,
but they're shut down like for real. You will be
right.
thrown in prison. You be beaten or killed
I mean,
for
this
being
just
a
hit me while
follower.
we're having this conversation. I was in my community group the other night, and we're back on a mask mandate, and some people are a little concerned about meeting together, no fault or anything. So we met on Zoom,
Mhm,
and about 50% of the people on Zoom, their biggest hang up was, I don't want to be on a computer anymore.
mhm,
I I don't want to attend because I don't want to be on a computer anymore. Well, if we're struggled because of the Zoom meetings and being on
mhm.
technology, what is that going to say about whether or not we're going to attend in VR world or metaverse or whatnot? It's a
Right.
tension point. Again, I, I
Mhm,
I hate leaving an episode where we don't have a definitive like answer for, but I think this conversation is, it's
mhm,
it's continually evolving as we're
mhm.
learning more, as we're discovering more, and we're really on a journey together to figure it out. And we're two guys who are in, one in Florida, one in Massachusetts, and we're just trying to figure it out. And we're just being honest and transparent that, like, this is this
Yeah.
is this is a
The
real,
yeah.
real you know topic that needs to be discovered and investigated more and talked about more, not just the pros and
Mhm.
pushing towards, like, yes, this is the way we need to go, but also, what are the ramifications
Yeah, like
moving forward.
what would the apostle Paul do?
Yeah, I
You
don't
know,
know.
I mean, would he Zoom with Ephesus and go over their issues? I mean, he'd be on the Zoom with the Church of Corinth a lot, saying, guys, you guys got to stop. All right. Just the whole letter I'm writing you is a bunch of please stop this and start this. But
To the
that's a
Jews,
whole
he
nother.
became Jews. The
Yeah.
Gentiles, he became Gentiles. To the
Yeah.
metaverse, he became metaverse.
I think he would have used the tool, but I told a group of people we have a starting point class, which is like our first, connection for people that want to learn more about our vision, values, and then eventually decide if they want to fully become members of our church. And one thing I try to say to people, and from the bottom of my heart, this is what I want for every person, that even if they're not a follower of Jesus, they would come to Christ and that they would feel completely connected and loved in a church family where they can fully become all that Jesus has called them to be, to fulfill the great commandment, to love God, love people, and then the Great Commission, right? Go make disciples of all the nations. And so we need to get on planes, and we need to go and plant, and we need to go actually physically do things for the sake of the gospel. So I told the folks, I said, more than anything, if it's not the Bridge Church, I pray that you will find a Bible believing, Jesus focused church, and that you would connect your life to that church and you would give your life away for the sake of the gospel, that you'd give, you'd go, you'd serve, you'd share your faith. You would do everything you can to bring glory to God by reaching people with the gospel. And I said, if it's not here, that's okay, but find a church where you can do that. Because at the very heart, I think, of what we're trying to get at today is it's not about nitpicking online. It's not about the apps and even the metaverse and how weird Facebook is and all that. It's saying we want every person to be encouraged and in relationship, living out a life that is not isolated, is not depressed, is not suicidal, is not broken. And I think for a lot of quote unquote church goers that are just choosing not to engage in person with real people, I just think at the end of the day, it's just not healthy. And I think over time, you lose your passion because you're not around other people that can encourage you to serve and give and go. And so, I mean, at the very heart of this, Jay, I know I'm kind of just preaching now, but man, that's the tension in my heart. And I know that's you feel that same way,
Well,
that we
yeah, I
want for
think
people.
the tension for me is, from a pastor's heart. I
Yeah.
just want to do everything I've been called to do, and I take my responsibility extremely serious.
Hmm.
I'm here to love and support and encourage you. And if I don't know where, again, and it's hard for pastors to keep up with who's where and what's going on, because I don't see, how many I have conversations. How many conversations do you have on a weekend when you see people? A
Hmm.
ton.
Yep.
I don't always get to interact with those that are watching online. I hear they're watching online. They'll tell me, "Hey, I watched online," but that's the extent of it. I watched online.
Hmm.
That's it. How's your mom? How's your family? How's everything
Hmm.
going? Those conversations are not happening like they do when we're in a room together. We're
Mhm.
rubbing shoulders together. And so from a
Mhm.
pastor's heart, it's just more along the lines of we want to come alongside of you, lock arms with you, and we want to see God do amazing things in and through you. But it really takes that engagement level, and to some extent, online becomes an excuse and a barrier for us to really live out our calling. And
Yeah. Life on life.
we have to be careful of that. It can be a
Mhm.
tool, but it cannot
Yep.
replace who we've been called to be as the local church. Josh, this is a longer and bigger conversation. I'd love, again, we'd love to hear from them. We'd love to hear from you who are listening. If you're a pastor, if you're a leader, share with us. We'd love to reach out. Again, there's not a lot of definitive like answers in this podcast, but it is really a conversation we want to have, and we really want to hear from you. Are we alone in this? Are we two oddballs out that are thinking, hey, really not sure? Are you there too? I say that with the risk of being shot down as a old man who is not embracing the future. But listen, I'm embracing the future, Josh. I'm ready. Let's go. Let's get into this metaverse if we have to. But I also
Whatever it
want
takes, right?
doing whatever it takes is I mean, I'm telling you, that's how we roll. But at the same time, we got to make sure that we're making disciples. That's what we've been called to do. So
That's right.
Josh, how can people reach out to us? How can they connect with us if they wanted to and continue the conversation?
Yeah. Our emails is thepastorpod@gmail.com, and you can shoot us some questions, or just if you have, like Jay said, we'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on what we talked about today. You can also shoot us an Instagram DM. You can tweet at us. We have a Facebook page, but it's not super active. I don't really know how to use Facebook pages that well. I'm not sure if we even need one, but we have a Facebook page if you want to comment there, or just shoot one of us a message on any of our social profiles. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, what's your private handle, your direct handle for you, Josh, is what, at Josh Robinson?
So it's like, I think it's like Josh_Robinson on Instagram and
Yes.
Twitter.
See,
I think.
you weren't an
How
early
about you?
embracer of it then. See, I was an early embracer.
You
I
were
listen,
on top of it.
I have all my handles are at J Mudd, like early embracer. I go steal it before all the other J Mudds. You're J Mudd listening to this. I'm the one that stole it. I have the J Mudd. I was early embracer. So listen, Josh, it's been always a good conversation. We want to thank you for joining us and really and you know, inviting us in, letting us in to your car ride, your home. I know some people do it while they listen while they work out. Whatever it is, thank you for being here. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week, until next time, have a great week.